In this video I will show you how to start your self-portrait collages using a variety of selection tools. So these are inspiration images which we reviewed in class already. Okay, so let's go into Photoshop. This was just a quick little sample that I did as well. And so this is the basic look that you want to go for. So we talked about the 3 different websites where you can download the vintage illustrations from. So check Classroom for those links, download and save into your Student Network folder. I created a little folder to keep all of my images that I want to use for my self-portrait. I also have scans from some old National Geographics in here, so I'm ready to start. So you want to sort of collect all of your images before you really dive into this. So I'm going to start with a portrait of Bob Ross here, and a lot of you guys were having some trouble opening things in Photoshop if they were just JPEGs and if you were going through Finder. So it'll be easier for you if you go through Bridge, because then all you have to do is double click, it will automatically open up into Photoshop. If you choose to do it through Finder, what you need to do is either right click or control click and hit open with and click on Adobe Photoshop, or you can open with by clicking on this little tool gearbox up here, open with Photoshop, or pick up the image and drag it down to your Photoshop icon. But I'm going to go through Bridge because it's a little bit easier. I don't have to think too much when I do it. So here's Bob Ross. So what you guys are going to do is a selection of your face and hair. Depending on the photo you have, if you want to include parts of your shoulder, you can do that. But I'm just going to do his head here. So again, we have our selection tools, rectangular or elliptical marquee, your lasso tools, you have the polygonal and magnetic, which have different functions, which we've gone over, and then quick selection and magic wand. Just really quickly, I do want to go over a couple little keyboard shortcuts for you. So I'm going to hit Command 0, this will fill up my screen with my image. I can hit Command A, and that will select my entire image. So you can see that the marching ants are around my entire image. If I make a selection, if I make a selection and I decide I don't like the selection and I want to start over, Command D will deselect. And if you want to reselect, you're like, oops, I didn't mean to deselect that, or if you clicked outside or something like that, you have to hit Shift Command D, and that will reselect what you just deselected. Once you have a selection, let's pretend this is a good selection. Okay, you can use your keyboard shortcuts. Command C will copy, and then Command V will paste that. And so if you're putting this into a new document, those would be your keyboard shortcuts, Command C and Command V. And then you can also do Command T to free transform. So I'm going to show you Command C, copies. I'm going to go to File, New. And you guys have the newest version of Photoshop, so your screens will look a little bit different than mine does right now. But when you click to make your new document for your project, it's going to be 8 by 10 inches and 300 pixels, and click Create. And then I hit Command V, and now his face, that selection I made, is now pasted into this document. So when you do this, if you want to change the size or anything like that, you hit Command T, that's your free transform. Here you can rotate. You can also click Shift and drag out those corners to resize the image. And then you would just click the check mark or hit Enter or Return to commit those changes. So those are the basics on the selection tool. So what I'm going to do is select his face and hair here. So I'm going to start with the quick selection tool. So what that will let me do is sort of paint in my selection. And keep in mind up here in your options bar you have different options: add to or subtract from selection. If you're on the marquee, add to, subtract, or intersect. So you want to make sure you're on add to, or you can just hit shift as you're adding to your selection because you don't want to end up starting over. So I'm going to just paint in around his face. Okay, so we've accidentally picked up some of this white background area, so here I'll click on the subtract from selection, make my brush a little bit smaller, and try to remove that background stuff that I don't need. Now, one of the really powerful tools here in Photoshop is the select and mask. So that will allow you to refine your selection. So if we zoomed in here, we would see that it's a little funky over here and it's pretty jagged, and we have a lot of the excess white in the background. So this is really important for things like your portrait, you know, because hair is a funny thing as far as selections go. So you have different views for this. I like the overlay because I get to see exactly what's selected, what's not selected. You could try onion skin, that'll show you the transparency, but see, like this you might have missed because it sort of blends in with that checkerboard. But all different views that can help you. So I'm going to leave it on overlay. You can adjust the opacity to see, like, oh, what am I missing? What do I need to add in? So I'm going to leave it sort of right here. Depending on what you've selected, and this will work for all of your selections as far as cleaning them up, you can click on Smart Radius and see if that kind of helps you out a little bit. You can drag this over, and you have to check and make sure it's doing something that you want it to do. So you're going to deselect all of those things, and you have these tools here which will help you with your selection. So this is a quick selection tool, works just like the one I just used. This is a refine edge tool, the little hand with the brush, and that's really good for the funky areas around hair. And then you also have a brush tool, and then you have the plus and minus sign. So I'm going to click on my minus sign and subtract this area for my selection. And this is a really good time to start using that your tablets to help you with the drawing components. Oops. And I can just click on plus and add that little part back in. So the idea is you want your selection to be smooth and accurate. Click on minus. I'm going to get rid of those trees there. Okay, and I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I'm just demonstrating this for you. So I'm going to use the little refine edge tool, and I'm just going to kind of paint around my edge, and you can see that it's sort of like creating this transparent thing around the hair. So that's going to help clean up that selection. And you can zoom in using Command plus or minus. And this isn't a very high resolution image, so it's going to be a little tough, but that's okay. You guys will have better images. Okay. So it looks pretty good. Go back in here and fix this stuff up here. Okay. So this you probably wouldn't want to use, the refine edge, for your illustrations that you're going to be selecting, because you're going to want those to have nice hard clean edges. But like I said, your hair is a funny thing. Okay. So you can just go around your whole selection here. Command 0 so I can see what I'm doing. Just going to go over that a little bit more. Okay. So let's say I'm really happy. I think this is a nice clean selection and I'm ready to go. Under output settings, you have a couple different options here. Selection, layer mask, new layer with layer mask, new document with layer mask. So we're just going to leave it on selection. Okay, the other functions here will come in handy later, so it's just good to know that these exist. And you're going to click OK. So now you see the marching ants around his little head there. And what I can do now, one of the most important things that you can do with selections here is save your selections. So let's say I spent a long time on this and it's perfect and I need to save it. So you go up to Select, Save Selection, and you give it a name. It's going to save it into this document and click OK. Now, what I need to do also is go to File, Save As, and save this as a Photoshop document, okay? That way it will save your selection. Okay, now let's say I deselect this and I do a bunch of other stuff and I close the document and then I reopen it tomorrow. I can go to Select, Load Selection, and click OK, and my selection is back and I don't have to start over. So even if you start a selection and you're not totally done with it or totally happy with it, you can save it, load it, and then go back to Select and Mask and continue refining it, and then just save it again. Okay, so I am going to hit Command C to copy this selection, and then Command V to paste it into this new document. Okay, and when you zoom in, you should see that your selection looks really nice and clean and everything is lovely. Okay, so now what you would want to do is start incorporating the other selections for your image. He had pet squirrels, so I'm going to add a squirrel into his little portrait here. So here I'm going to use the magic wand tool because I have that simple white background, and that's going to help me out a lot. So up here there's this little check mark for contiguous, so if that's selected, it's only going to select the pixels that are the same color that are connected, okay, that are next to each other. So I'm going to deselect that and I'm going to reselect my background, and now you can see that this little section by the tail here is also selected. If contiguous was checked off, we're missing that part. Okay, if that happens too, you can also just click on Add to Selection up here and click in here, and that will add that back in. So oh, we're missing this little bit here on the acorn. Okay, so now I would go to Select and Mask. Oops, let's hit Cancel. So what I did was I selected the white background because it was really simple. So I'm going to go to Select, Inverse, and now my squirrel is selected. Now I can go to Select and Mask, and I have my red background, and I can zoom in and go around and clean up any little funky edges. So I'm just going to leave this on the brush tool, and I'm going to go on Subtract, and I'll use my bracket key next to my P to go ahead and smooth out these edges. You can try with something like this. That might be good. You can shift your edge, so that's going to give you more of like that white background glow. You could go in a little bit. You can smooth the selection, which might be good for certain things. Feathering is partially selecting pixels, so that'll give you like a soft fuzzy edge, which we don't want for this particular project. This might work for other things, okay? Click OK. You can also go up to Select and Modify, and you can add border, smooth, expand, contract, but we're not going to mess around with those too much right now, just showing you guys those things. So what I'm going to do is minus from, so you can make this as big as 1 pixel and go ahead and paint in those areas in between the whiskers. And yes, selections are tedious if you want to get a good selection. Okay, so I'm not going to spend too much time doing that, but that looks pretty good. I'd probably go in and clean up around the hair here. You could try the Refine Edge tool along here to get rid of some of that white. And you'd have to just double check and make sure that looks the way you want it. Alright, let's hit OK. Again, I could go to select, save selection. So I'm going to hit Command C and pop this into here. And then you have your move tool, and again you can hit Command T, hold the shift key down and resize your squirrel, so on and so forth. So then you can also add in some of those backgrounds like from the magazine if you want to. So you can use up to 2 marquee selections, just not for your face or for your animals. You can also hold the the space bar down. Ooh, it's not working. Ah, there you go. Shift, and then you can actually move your selection around. So let's say you draw a square that you like, but you're not totally happy with where it ended up. Hold the space bar down, and then you can click and drag the selection. If you don't hold the space bar down, what it does is sorry. It will, oh no, it won't. It's not automatically selecting it. Never mind. An older version, so you should just move it. Okay. So here I might want to click on subtract from selection and draw. So now I could like create a frame. Command C, Command V, Command T. Enlarge this by holding the shift key down, and that could create, you know, some sort of geometric shape in there. I could also do my elliptical selection. Okay, and you want to pay attention to your layer stack over here. So what I would do is, once I have a couple things, start to rename them. Okay, so you just double click and then you can type in what they are, so that when you need to rearrange things you can easily say, okay, I want to move him up so he's on top of all the other layers. Okay. Another thing I should say too is you can make changes to your self-portrait if you wanted to. So what you could do is, while your face is selected, is hit Command J, and then you can use any of these functions here. You could also do some of the filters. You can go to filter, filter gallery. You know, you could do some funky things like this if you wanted to. Or you could just keep it as simple as, you know, something that works well with the look that you want to go for. So maybe I'll do that. So when you're happy with that, you just select the adjustment and the layer below it and hit Command E, and that will merge everything together. And then Command A to select all, Command C, because I already did my selection so I can do it that way, and then Command V, and I'll call that Bob 2. Okay, turn that off, move tool, Command T, Shift, okay, and commit those changes. Okay, so this is sort of looking like a brownish sepia toned sort of composition, so maybe I'll go with that. But that's basically how you start it. So again, it's 8 by 10, and you are doing selections of your face and then any of the flowers or animals or anything like that from those illustrations, the 3 websites I shared with you, as well as at least 1 magazine that you've scanned into it. So you're going to end up with 6 selections, 6 different selections, and then you can use up to 2, well, 8 selections total. 6 have to be the selections of the pictures, and up to 2 can be marquee selections. Okay, so that's how you guys get started. When you're done, you will add in a solid color or gradient fill. It's up to you what you want to add in the background. Maybe I'll do something like bluish. You can click on the little gear here and you can load more gradients, you can also change them by clicking on different colors. You can move these over if you need to. You can change opacities of things until you're happy with the colors that you have. Okay? As you're working, make sure you're clicking File, Save As, and save it as a PSD so that you can go back and edit it and all your layers are intact. And then here is another example. So I did some fun things with, there's a dot in the background. With the frames, I did change the blend modes on them here to vivid light. I was just playing around. I also added the gradient map to her face. Originally it was a black and white photo. Some of the flowers, they were originally yellow, but this flower I duplicated here, enlarged it, and changed the color a little bit with the hue saturation, so you can do that with your layers. However, this would count as one selection because I only selected it once. So for Unity, you can repeat the same element more than once, but as far as the requirements for the assignment, it will still only count as one selection. However, using the same element multiple times will improve your composition as far as Unity, repetition, and harmony go. So, have fun with these. They can be surrealistic, they can include things that you like or that are important to you, or just things that you think look cool together. Okay, so have fun with this, experiment with the selection tools, and keep in mind you can use multiple selection tools to get the selection that you want. And if you have any issues with the selection tools, please review the selection tool tutorial videos that are posted in Google Classroom that go more in depth on what each of these tools can do. And that about does it for this. So have fun and be creative. Can't wait to see these finished.